words of our Divine Mother. From the book The Mother, Question and Answers, Volume 3, page 52. Question: Sweet Mother, why is one pursued by a host of adverse conditions when one first becomes acquainted with yoga? Someone has said that when you open the door to yoga, you are confronted by a multitude of obstacles. Is it true? For this, our Divine Mother says, it is not an absolute rule and much depends on the person. Adverse conditions come to many as a test for the weak points in their nature. This indispensable basis for yoga, which must be well established before you can walk freely on the path, is equanimity. Naturally, from that point of view, all disturbances and tests which you have to pass, but they are necessary too in order to break down the limits which your mental constructions have built around you and which prevent your opening to the divine light and the divine truth. The whole mental world in which you live is limited, even though you may not know or feel its limitations, and something must come and break down this building in which your mind has shut itself and liberated. For instance, you have some fixed rules, ideas, principles to which you attribute an absolute importance. Most often it's an adherence to a certain moral principles or precepts, such as a commandment, honor thy father or mother, or thou shalt not harm anyone, and the rest. Each man has some fad or one preferred shibboleth or another. Each one thinks that he is free from this or that prejudice from which others suffer, and is willing to regard such notions as quite false. But he imagines that his is not like theirs. It is for him the truth, the real truth. An attachment to a rule of the mind is an indication of a blindness still hiding somewhere. Take, for example, the very universal superstition prevalent all the world that asceticism and spirituality are one and the same thing. If you describe someone as a spiritual person or a spiritual man or a woman, people at once think of one who does not eat or sits all day without moving. One lives in a hut in a great poverty. One has given away all he had and keeps nothing for himself. This is the picture that immediately arises in the minds of 99 people out of 100 when you speak of a spiritual man. The one proof of spirituality for them is poverty and abstinence from everything that is pleasant or comfortable. This is a mental construction which must be thrown down if you are to be free to see and follow the spiritual truth. For you come to the spiritual life with a sincere aspiration, and you want to meet the divine and realize the divine in your consciousness and in your life. And then what happens is that you arrive to a place which is not at all a hut and meet a divine one who is living a comfortable life, eating freely, surrounded by beautiful or luxurious things, not distributing what he has to the poor, but accepting and enjoying all that people give. At once, with your fixed mental rule, you are believed and cry, why, what is this? I thought I was to meet a spiritual man. This false conception has to be broken down and disappear. Once it is gone, you find something that is much higher than your narrow ascetic rule, a complete oneness that leaves the being free. If you are to get something, you accept it, and if you are to give up the very same thing, you, with an equal willingness, leave it. Things come and you take them up, things go and you let them pass with the same smile of equanimity in the taking or leaving. Our Divine Mother says, do not be surprised if you are immediately put in the presence of not so very convenient or a congenial atmosphere. not only once but repeatedly, until you understand that your ideal is no more than a mental principle, and that a seeker of the spiritual truth should not be bound or attached to a mental rule. And when once you are free from it, you will find perhaps that all these scenes which troubled you were indeed sent in order to trouble you and shake you out of your mental building, your mental conceptions, have singularly enough ceased altogether to happen in your presence. Our Divine Mother says, when you come to the Divine, you must abandon all mental conceptions. But instead of doing that, you throw your conceptions upon the Divine. You want the Divine to obey them. The only true attitude for a yogi is to be plastic and to be ready to obey the Divine command, whatever it may be. Nothing must be indispensable to him, nothing a burden. Often the very first impulse of those who want to live the spiritual life is to throw away all that they have, but they do because they want to get rid of a burden, not because they want to surrender to the Divine. Men who possess wealth and are surrounded by the things that give them luxury and enjoyment turn to the Divine, and immediately their movement is to run away from these things, or they say to escape from their bondage. But it is a wrong movement. You must not think that the things have been given to you belong to you. The things that are being given to you does not belong to you. They belong to the Divine. If the Divine wants you to enjoy anything, enjoy it. But be ready to give it up the very next moment when the Divine doesn't want you to do that, with a smile, not a hush. Next topic from 143 page. Difficulties in yoga. Our Divine Mother says, the nature of your difficulty indicates the nature of the victory you will gain, the victory you will exemplify in yoga. Thus, if there is a persistent selfishness, it points to a realization of universality as your most prominent achievement in future. When selfishness is there, you also have the power to reverse this very difficulty into the opposite, a victory of your outward wideness. When you have something to realize, you will have in you just the characteristic which is the contradiction of that something. Face to face with the defect, the difficulty, you say, oh, I am like that, how awful it is. But you ought to see the truth of the situation. Say to yourself, my difficulty shows me clearly that I have ultimately got to change to represent, to reach the absolute negation of it, quality at the other pole. This is my mission. Even in the ordinary life, says our Divine Mother, even in the ordinary life with the ordinary consciousness, we have sometimes the experience of contraries. He who is very timid, has no courage in front of circumstances, proves capable of bearing the most. To one who has the aspiration for the Divine, says our Divine Mother, to one who has the aspiration for the Divine, the difficulty which is always before him is the door by which he will attain God in his own individual manner. Let me repeat this for you. To one who has the aspiration for the Divine, the difficulty which is always before him is the door by which he will attain God in his own individual manner. It is his particular path towards the divine realization. There is also the fact that if somebody has 100 difficulties, it means he will have a tremendous realization, provided, of course, they are in him patience and endurance, and he keeps the aspiring flame of Agni burning against those defects. And remember, says our Divine Mother, and always remember, the grace of the Divine is generally proportioned to your difficulties. The grace is always there, and we need to get rid of the negativity, and the grace starts working in us. These are the golden words of our Divine Mother.